Some news in just a short while ago. A car bomb has killed 10 people in southwestern Pakistan. In the town of Quetta, a car bomb exploded in a Shiite Muslim area after the morning Eid prayers. The death toll, initially put at about 5, has risen now to 10, with 15 people wounded in that car bombing in Quetta. Australia has lashed out at WikiLeaks, calling it incredibly irresponsible for publishing a secret US cable detailing Australians with suspected links to Yemeni terrorism. The whistleblowing site's latest batch of documents includes one from the US Embassy in Canberra that recommends 11 Australians be placed on a no-fly list and a further 12 on another selectee watch list. Canberra has condemned that release. Well, it's time now for our international press review with Elena Casas. Thanks very much for being with us. Troops massed around Sirte, then, the last bastion of Gaddafi's support. There are fears, though, expressed in the press over how Gaddafi supporters will be treated if and when the city is taken.
Yes, let's have a look at the Egypt-based blog, The Arabits. They've got an interesting piece today headlined, "Is Sirte the New Benghazi?" What they mean is that it was a siege of Benghazi, then surrounded by Gaddafi troops, which originally led NATO to intervene because they were worried about civilians in that city. They're now worrying about civilians in Sirte, now that it's been surrounded by anti-Gaddafi troops. The blog says there's evidence a lot of the civilians living in Sirte are generally very loyal to Gaddafi and therefore may try and make some kind of last stand that could result in a civilian massacre. They say this could put NATO in a very difficult situation because they are, of course, supplying airstrikes and artillery to those troops surrounding Sirte, but they also have this responsibility to protect civilians. So if it looks like the anti-Gaddafi troops are going to kill too many civilians when they take the city of Sirte, which they say they will on Saturday if it does not surrender, as you said in the bulletin, then that means NATO could be put in a catch-22 situation when it may find itself either obliged to fire on the anti-Gaddafi troops that it's supposed to be fighting with to stop them from killing civilians, or allowing war crimes to go by unpunished in order to get that city back under the control of the new government.
Now, The Guardian also worried about what anti-Gaddafi troops are doing to civilians.
Yes, this is an interesting piece here in The Guardian about racism in Libya. They're looking at the number of foreign migrant workers, mostly black Africans, who have been detained by the National Transitional Council and those anti-Gaddafi troops supposedly because they were foreign mercenaries hired by Gaddafi, although the paper says there actually is no evidence he ever did hire foreign mercenaries. Why has this happened? Well, they say it goes back to the divisions of society under Gaddafi. The main people who formed the National Transitional Council were politicians, businessmen and notables within the regime who rose to power under Gaddafi, and then as an attempt to try and take some of the blame for crimes committed under him off of people who are now working with the opposition, it's been convenient for them to paint black African migrants as a scapegoat. But the paper describes this as a terrible stain on the new democratic revolution, and they say that NATO must do something about it. The international community needs to speak out about it because you can't allow a new state to be born with this worrying racism going on.
Now we're going to head to Israel, Elena, where Haaretz is reporting that the army is arming settlers.
Yes, this is an exclusive reported by them today. They say the Israeli Defence Force has been giving settlers arms, tear gas and stun grenades and training them in how to use them because Israel is very worried about an uprising of Palestinians in September to coincide with the planned bid for statehood at the UN. Now, they are being given this training, but of course Israeli soldiers won't actually be there to monitor how they use these weapons. Supposedly they're drawing red lines around the settlements and Palestinians will be shot at if they cross them. But of course any demonstrating Palestinians won't actually know where these red lines are supposed to be, and there won't be anyone controlling how the settlers use the weapons. So really, the paper suggests in an editorial that they're giving them carte blanche to fire at Palestinians whenever they choose to. And of course, any creating of a border around these settlements is incredibly controversial anyway, because this is land that would supposedly belong to a Palestinian state when one is created.
We're going to move on to something quite different. The US Senate investigating human rights abuses committed in Guatemala 60 years ago, Elena.
Yes, just quickly, this is something that's created a huge amount of outrage in the Latin American press because a US Senate committee has just admitted that a US investigation carried out by the military in Guatemala in the 1940s, deliberately infecting people with diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea without telling the patients, caused at least 83 people to die and gave thousands of people lifelong health problems. So there's a very angry editorial in the Guatemalan paper Prensa Libre, which is pretty typical of the coverage this is getting across Latin America, saying that this is an atrocity, the like of which was only seen in the experiments carried out by the Nazis during the Second World War. And they want a public apology from Barack Obama to the Guatemalan nation and compensation for families of the victims.
Elena Casas with a look at the headlines in the international press. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Still to come, ExxonMobil pips BP